Hello and welcome to this morning's coverage of the Israel-Hamas war as the conflict continues. I'm Olumide Macaulay. Coming up today, shooting attack in Jerusalem wounds at least 6 people. United Nations calls for irreversible move towards two-state solution to Israel-Gaza crisis. Plus, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu attends ceremony for new Israeli village to be built near Gaza as President Isaac Herzog commits to increasing and sustaining aid into Gaza. Many thanks for joining us. We begin in Jerusalem. At least 7 people are wounded in a shooting attack. Israel's Magen David Adom Ambulance Services released the news this morning as police reported that 2 suspected attackers were neutralized on the spot. A large number of ambulances and police converged on the scene of the shooting, which happened during morning rush hour at one of the entrances to the city. Israeli media reported that the 2 gunmen opened fire near a bus stop. 2 of the wounded are in critical condition. The United Nations has called for the international community to move towards a 2-state solution to the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, adding that Jerusalem should serve as the capital of both states. Delivering a speech authored by UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, Tatiana Valovaya, Director General of the UN office in Geneva, says this will mean living side by side in peace and security. The comments coincide with the United Nations International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people, which is observed annually. It marked the United Nations General Assembly's approval of a plan to partition Palestinian territories into Arab and Jewish states and for international rule over Jerusalem. Calls for a 2-state solution have grown in the wake of the deadly Hamas terror attacks against Israel on October the 7th. A 2-state agreement will create a state for the Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza Strip alongside Israel. Israel says the Palestinian state must be demilitarized so as to not threaten its security. Palestinians want East Jerusalem, which includes the old city sites sacred to Muslims, Jews, and Christians, to be the capital of their state. But Israel counters this, saying Jerusalem shall remain its indivisible and eternal capital.
In demanding an end to the occupation and the blockade of Gaza. It is long past time to move in a determined, irreversible way towards a 2-state solution on the basis of United Nations resolutions and international law, with Israel and Palestine living side by side in peace and security, with Jerusalem as the capital of both states.
Now the 2-state solution is difficult after the settlements and shrinking, but still possible if there is a will. And maybe it's a wake up after this loses 20,000 Palestinians murdered. 70% of them are children, women, and elderly. And the total destruction of Gaza and what's going in West Bank is not less than. So now is the moment, and it's good for Israel, by the way. If they don't accept the idea, it will be too late for them, not for us.
In a press conference at the United Nations, Saudi Foreign Minister Prince Faisal bin Farhan and Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan stressed the need for a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres had warned earlier that the Gaza Strip was in the midst of an epic humanitarian catastrophe and urges the world not to look away. Negotiations between Israel and Hamas to extend the Gaza pause were overshadowed at the last minute on Wednesday by an unconfirmed claim by Hamas that a family of Israeli hostages, including a 10-month-old baby, had been killed.
We are here to make a clear statement that a truce is not enough. What is needed is a ceasefire. What is needed is a credible peace, and a peace that lasts and that allows the Palestinians and the Israelis to live side by side in two states. Anything else will result in continuing crisis in the region.
We are, as a group, is working very hard to make sure that the international community lives up to its responsibilities, both legal and moral. I think this is very important because in the absence of moral compass, we will lose our way as humanity. So therefore, as international community, we need to do our best to address this issue at every level, at humanitarian level, at political level, and we need immediate ceasefire, we need immediate humanitarian assistance. At the same time, we need to start immediately to address the root cause of the problem, which is two-state solution.
Now, the United States is hopeful that the truce in Gaza can be extended. U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Linda Thomas-Greenfield, speaking to reporters on Wednesday, added that it's in the hands of Hamas.
Good afternoon. We're hopeful that the truce can be extended, but as I said in the Council, this is all in the hands of Hamas. The Israelis have said if they continue to release 10 hostages a day, they will extend by a day. So it truly is, in their hands, but I do think there is a potential for that, and we're actively working to extend the deal. We're continuing to work to get American hostages and all hostages released from the clutches of Hamas and the other groups. 2 Americans have already been released, and we are hoping to get all of the hostages, all of the Americans out.
Now, as the temporary truce comes to an end, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is reiterating that Israel will continue fighting Hamas in Gaza until the end. Israel and Hamas were on Wednesday considering the parameters of a potential new phase of the Gaza truce deal that includes Hamas releasing hostages who are men or military personnel, not only women and children. Leaders of the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency and Israel's Mossad met Qatar's Prime Minister in Doha earlier to discuss the possible new phase and what might be needed to reach a ceasefire lasting more than a handful of days, as is the current situation. Qatari negotiators are and have met Hamas officials ahead of the meeting to gauge their willingness to agree with the new parameters. The outcome of the discussion between Qatar and Hamas is unclear. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benny Gantz confirmed that he had met with family members of the youngest Israeli hostage being held in Gaza, 10-month-old Kfir Bibas, after reports from Hamas that the infant Kfir, his brother, Ariel, and mother had been killed during the earlier Israeli bombardment. Israeli officials added that they are checking the Hamas report about the Bibas family, a very emotive issue in Israel, where the family, the 10-month-old Kfir, his 4-year-old brother Ariel, and their mother Shiri are among the most high-profile hostages. Meanwhile, as the handover of more Israeli hostages by Hamas were underway in Gaza on the final day of a 2-day extension of a truce in the war, the Israeli military chief, General Staff Lieutenant Herzi Halevi, says he approved the strike plans for the continuation of the ground operation, with Gantz and other military chiefs should the truce not be extended. Now, for a little bit more information on the Bibas family, relatives wondered why it was taking so long. Yossi Schneider's cousin, Shiri, her husband, Yarden, and their 2 children were held captive by Hamas since October the 7th were not released at the start of the truce between Israel and Hamas. Neither were their names on the list of 10 extra people released on Tuesday. Yossi says the waiting and watching is like Schindler's List. Speaking in Tel Aviv, Schneider said he didn't understand why his nephews, at least Ariel, who is 4 years old, and the baby Kfir, who is 10 months old and a half months, have not been let go. Schneider's relatives live near the kibbutz Nir Oz on the southern tip of Israel, not far from the Gaza Strip. After the October 7 attack, he saw his 32-year-old cousin Shiri and her 2 children on a video released by Hamas via their official Telegram channel. In the video, a clearly distressed Shiri can be seen holding her children, the 9-month-old Kafir, the 4-year-old Ariel, both redheads. The video, which is one of the most viewed of the Hamas videos of the hostages, has gone viral. His aunt and uncle were killed in that attack.
It's like the Schindler List. We are waiting to see who's gonna survive, who's not. And unfortunately, we're speaking about my cousin Shiri and the 2 little kids. That Ariel is only 4 years old, and Kfir is now about 10.5 months old. He's almost 15% of his life is in prison. He's not prison, he's in captivity somewhere underground. And we have this last couple of hours to try to address Biden or President Sisi from Egypt or somebody from Qatar to understand that we are speaking about 10 months old little baby and 4 years old little boy. He's still a baby himself. And that they need to do whatever they can to push and make sure that it will be on this list. I don't know when the second chance will be. We have only one address, and this address is Hamas, and they should do whatever they can and they need to bring them back. We didn't want them to become a symbol. We didn't want that Hamas will use that because they are a symbol, they will use that to do a harder negotiation. The kids, you don't need to negotiate about it. I don't know what Hamas was thinking when they kidnapped Kfir and Ariel. What they're afraid of, that Kfir will attack them. What did they saw when they kidnapped him? He's not a soldier. He's not a grown-up person that could have done anything to hurt him when they invaded Israel. So I have no reason why they did what they did.
U.S. President Joe Biden is relieved that Israeli-American hostage Liat Benin has been released by Hamas after being abducted during the terrorist group's attack on Israel on October the 7th. President Biden said Benin had crossed the Gaza border and was safe in Egypt. Benin was among 16 hostages released on Wednesday by Hamas on the final day of the 2-day truce extension in the war between Israel and Hamas. President Biden says he'd spoken to the mother and father.
Liat Benin is safe in Egypt. She's crossed the border. I talked with her mother and father. They're very appreciative, and things are moving well. She'll soon be home with her 3 children.
President of the United States, Joe Biden, and in the midst of the war between Israel and Hamas and calls for a total ceasefire, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has attended a ceremony of a new Israeli village that will be built near Gaza. The village is to be dedicated to the memory of a local council leader who was killed in the October 7 terror attack. The community, which was decided on by the government last February, was initially called Hanun, but its name was changed in the wake of the October attack. And the President of Israel, Isaac Herzog, is pledging his commitments and the governments to increasing and sustaining the supply of humanitarian aid to Gaza. President Herzog made the comments while touring the Nitzana crossing of the Israel-Egypt border, where trucks said to contain food, water, shelter equipment, and medical supplies were stationed before crossing into Gaza. The president says many trucks were traveling into Gaza with humanitarian aid.
There's a huge amount of trucks that are flowing into Gaza with humanitarian aid. The quantity goes up and up in various forms, and the effort that is being done both on the international level and the Israeli-Egyptian level towards Gaza is huge. I want to thank all the partners that are dealing with the humanitarian aid that flows into Gaza. Israel is committed to increasing and sustaining the supply of humanitarian aid to the citizens of Gaza, those who are uninvolved in battle and in war and in terror.
Still ahead, as disease spreads, World Health Organization says Gaza's health system must be protected. We'll have that story and more after the break. Please stay with us. Welcome back to Israel-Hamas war, and we turn our attention to a conversation with public affairs analyst Mr. Oluseyi Adeyemo, who speaks to us virtually from Lagos, Southwest Nigeria. Good morning. Thank you for making out the time to be with us today.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
Could we begin with the disappearance of the hostages, the 10-month-old baby Kafir, who was taken when he was 9, his brother 4-year-old Ariel, their mother Shiri, and in that particular situation, it seems to have thrown a spanner in the works of a continued military pause, because 4 days turned to 2, 2 days could have turned to more, but this seems to have been a kick in the gut for the Israelis, because it was widely publicized, these 2 minors that were taken hostage. And now we heard a report the day before yesterday that Hamas had handed over the baby and his brother and their mother to another military terrorist group in Gaza. But now we hear that that family have perished. What do you make of this changing situation?
It's an unfortunate development, because the truth of the matter is all of us were hoping that there'll be an extension and eventually a complete truce. But you see, when something is being handled by human beings, you would always expect shortfalls like this. We had expected that everyone on both sides would be fair enough in the way they handle everything, so that the peace that we all desire will eventually come through. But it's an unfortunate situation that this is happening at the tail end, because some of us had thought that there was going to be some form of extension today. And by today, we'll start to see some other releases and all of that. And eventually, we then start having, some level of breathers, so that the peace that we all desire will return. But unfortunately, this has happened. But I still hope that this will not completely stall some form of extension that we all are expecting will happen.
Hamas is the ruling government in Gaza. Al-Qassam brigades are the military wing of Hamas. They said after the October 7 attack that it was a military operation that they conducted. But with the hostages that are taken and the gray areas where there are 40 people unaccounted for, and with this case of this disappearance and the alleged death of this family, what should we think of the control that Hamas says it has over Gaza, where there are other groups in Gaza that are not giving them the information according to them as they tell us?
The truth of the matter is, they can say whatever they want to say. You cannot be in a situation like this and claim to have full control. And the truth of the matter is, we all know that apart from Hamas, there are other smaller groups who are inflicting terror on people. It's a horrible situation. It's a situation that we hope will be brought under control, and some sense of semblance of sanity will be brought to bear in that space. You can blame Israel and complain about all the things they have done, but without a doubt, what is happening on the side of Hamas, the Palestinians in that space, is also something that we all should condemn, because truth of the matter is, all sort of, and again, you see, this thing is historical. It has happened over time, and in little forms, telling your children that you need to protect yourself You need to, this is what is happening. The rest of the world hates you and all of that. Over time, they have built hatred in these people, and you can't control. You see, all you can do is be careful with the kind of conversation or the kind of things you tell children. If you give them the wrong information, what they will do with it's completely out of your control. And these are the product of the kind of training, the kind of narratives, conversation they've had with their words over time, and then they've broken into all these groups that that are inflicting pains all over the place. And our prayer is that globally we'll be able to manage it so that we'll not continue to have this kind of groups or terror groups all over the place.
Mr. Adeyemo, how problematic or feasible is it, or will it be, to have a two-state solution where Jerusalem is the capital of both Israel and Palestine?
So at the end of the day, whether they agree or not, they've been living together for a long time. And if this is the way we want to at least start to have some semblance of sanity in that space, I think we should exploit. Because you see, like I said over and over again, they have continued to live with themselves, and they have some level of relations. So it will not be completely difficult to live amongst themselves. All they need is to see that, look, nobody is out to kill anybody for the sake of it. What we just want is so that everybody will be reasonable. Because you see, whether it's in Hamas, Israel, Palestinian, or Nigeria, unreasonable people will be unreasonable. So if we build a structure, a situation where we can start to demand some level of governance, some level of sanity, fairness, equity is brought to bear, we definitely need to have them living together, and probably having the same capital would be the very good start to the good end that we all desire, because already they are sharing a lot of things. So the temple on this side, the Israelis are praying. On the other side, the Palestinians are praying. So they're already sharing a lot of things anyway. So all we need to do is just to formalize it and be able to get people to start seeing that we don't necessarily have to kill ourselves. Because you see, when you really take a step back from all of this and you ask yourself the question, do we really need to do this to ourselves? Do we really need to inflict this pain on ourselves, apart from unreasonable people who are already, we all know that they're terrorists, and we should all, whether you're Palestinians or Israelis, ostracize these people, let them be brought out of our midst, because they really don't belong to the human race. And whatever name they bear, wherever they come from, anybody who takes delight in killing other people for their own satisfaction should not be allowed to live amongst us.
And easier said than done, one might say, concerning the Jerusalem being the capital of both entities, given the historical antecedents of both situations, the Israelis and the Palestinians, who laid claim to that particular location when Israel was displaced. But to remember the antiquity of Jerusalem, and that it's in the Jewish religion, in the Christian religion, how important it is. It's the city of the great king, a city of David. David, they call their flag the Star of David. I'm sure David had nothing to do with it, but they call their star the Star of David. So telling them to share Jerusalem with the Palestinians will be anathema to the Jews.
You see,
as a capital.
I get. I mean, the thing is, if you want truce, you must learn in negotiation globally. There's a need to take a step back, because you see, you then ask yourself, put it side by side, because of this history and what you call degradation of the historical beliefs and stands, people must continue to die. Now, if that is what they need to sacrifice for us to have a global peace, I don't think it's too much for them to sacrifice. Because the truth is, right now, you have a situation where there's chaos, no governance, nobody is accepting anything, everybody is a government to themselves. So apart from Abbas, like we have rightly just highlighted, there are all sorts of small governments everywhere, and what they're doing is they're inflicting pain, they're destroying. So if we all agree and come together and bring sanity to bear in this environment, and all or some of the things we need to sacrifice is for us to have a capital that will be shared by some of these people who, I say again, are already part of your family, because they might not come out to say it, but I'm sure there have been some level of intermarrying, level of relationship that they have had. You know, it's like us. I mean, you don't necessarily have to go to Israel. Yes, I am not from Republic of Benin, but because we share the same border with them, we share the same border with Cameroon, we're already having certain things that we do together and we share together, at least those who live in the border area. So, truth is, you're not doing anything that is is extraordinary, because you're already sharing certain things with them anyway. But for the sake of peace, for the sake of having a situation where some level of sanity will have, we say, can we just try, sacrificing this? I don't think it's too much to sacrifice.
The incident that occurred in Jerusalem today, where 7 people were wounded in an attack that happened just today, it happened just this morning, it's indicative of the sorts of long drawn out, extremely complicated situation where even the Palestinians, who are grateful for the humanitarian pause and want it extended, and even Hamas, who also have held and have been they've held to this humanitarian pause, couldn't control this situation, or we don't know whether they're involved in it at all, where there was an attack in Jerusalem itself.
Now, so Olumide, I agree that some of these things are tied to religious belief. And when beliefs are religious, they're very strong. People do things. But you see, what we're saying is we're at a point where we all have seen that there's a need for us to move towards a new solution, a new resolution. And so, yes, you have believed this all your life, but what have you gotten out of it? You have gotten pain, you have gotten death, you have gotten world condemnation, you have gotten a situation where your family, your dreams, your desires, you have lost them because you have held on to this parochial, in my own opinion, parochial belief. And I think whether we like it or not, as human beings, and I know human beings all over the world are reasonable people, all we need is to take a step back from what we have held on forever and start to see a new way of doing things, so that we'll not continue to inflict things on ourselves because we believe in certain things. And like I said, and I want to emphatically say that for those we have identified who are doing this and are allowing this terror, let us identify them, ostracize them, remove them, and identify that these people are enemies of peace to humankind, and we cannot allow them to have their way again. It's about time that humanity must take the front burner and peace must return to our world.
Let's look at how possibly there's fuel to the fire in the way of Iran, who've been accused of fighting a proxy war with Israel. Iran, maybe the North Korea of the Middle East, having problems not only with Israel, but with other Arab countries as well. And in this case, there are reports that over 90% of Hamas's exploits are funded by Iran. Do you foresee a collision course between Israel and Iran to take out the Hamas situation as far as Israel is concerned?
You see, like I said, all of these things are tied to history, relationship. It's there. Now, what I just see is that all of us are beginning to realize that or the way we have done things over the years is not the way we can afford to continue to do it. It's about time that we change the narrative. It's about time that we change the strategy. It's about time that we see that we can do things much better than we used to do them. So yes, the relationships are there, and there are sides. People are taking sides. People are taking sides, not just in Iran. As far as America, you have people who are American and Palestinians at the same time. Well, I don't know how you describe them. They're Palestinians by birth, but they now reside in America, and they have their own bias. They have their own stand. They've taken their stand, and those are the people we need to manage so that we can all realize and appreciate the fact that yes, we feel this pain. Yes, there is this history. Yes, this is what has happened over the years. But now, going forward, how best can we start to do things so that we can have a better world and a more peaceful world than we have right now?
But how do you handle an Iran who say they want to see to the extinction of Israel, and Hamas who also want Israel to disappear from the map? And Hamas have the funds, at least now, with all the unfreezing of the funds that they've been able to possibly get in the future as frozen by the United States, and the sanctions that have greatly decreased. That's the impetus that Hamas has. So should possibly Qatar and Egypt bring their influence as they are bringing to bear in this hostage crisis and calling for ceasefire on Iran as well? But what can possibly make Iran change its tact?
You see, they say this now because there's a truce. When the pounding was going on, what did they say? So the thing is, everybody in a fight, and I'm sure we all have experienced this, no matter how small they are, whenever there's some level of respite, you see them shouting loud and coming up with all sorts of suggestions and ideas and claims that we all know that are not tenable. You understand? So truth is, it is clear. I mean, from what we all have experienced, in the past 1 month, we see that if we had allowed Israel to continue the way they were going, I mean, all of us definitely could not bear the kind of pain and the kind of death we were seeing every day. The moment you put on your television, whether it's in the middle of the night or in the morning, we couldn't afford it. So I don't want us to be distracted by what people or the claim and the counter claims. I want us to be focused on what can be achieved if we decide as the people collectively and say we truly want to have a peaceful world. We truly want to have a united world. It is not going to be an easy thing to achieve because over the years we have had different things. People have been indoctrinated. People have been taught that this is the way things are. Yes, they even have several examples to show, things to point to. But the truth is, when we take steps, and I'm sorry I'm repeating myself over and over again, if we take step away from all of the things we've had, we have seen, we have even experienced or suffered, and see that, oh, is it possible to have a better world? Is it possible to have a peaceful world? We will all see that it is possible. And if we all agree and start to go in that direction, I can assure you that by this time of next year, we'll be shocked at the kind of result that we will get. And I'm praying and hoping that we will never have any reason to go back to just what just happened to us in the past 1 month.
What's your view of the suffering of the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip, and for the influx of the prisoners who've been released from Israeli prisons, where it's been reported that some of these prisoners who are minors were not charged to court in some of the cases of those who were arrested by the Israeli IDF or the Israeli security forces and put in jail. They were never charged to court. They were there. They're amongst those now released. How do we view the way Hamas has handled their relations with Israel, and Israel the way they're handling their relations with Hamas vis-a-vis they're taking in, arresting Palestinians who, for various reasons, always linked to terror attacks, but holding them without charging them?
So when you charge somebody or arrest somebody for terror, you don't give them the fair, in most cases, treatment that you give an ordinary criminal or somebody you consider have done a civil or committed a civil offense. When you say somebody is a terrorist, it means the person just kills for fun, skills for whatever reason, desire and all of that, and the person is not a regular human being. And so I do not expect that they will have been given the kind of treatment that you give somebody who had committed a civil offense. And I would also say that whatever they had done before now definitely is not something that we want to use as a yardstick for going forward. A lot of mistakes have been made. Things have been done in a particular way that I believe that they on both sides would not be proud of. But what we are saying is we have another opportunity to do things better. The things we have done in the past before today was what birthed what happened, was what the Hamas people claim gave them the reason or the impetus to have gone into Israel. And so Israelis also, the way they have reacted says that the way things had been done in the past was the reason why they had reacted the way they had reacted and gone all the way they had gone, and all of the things that we have all seen and we all agree are definitely not the way we want to live our lives. We don't want to wake up in the morning or expecting that so this thing will spread into Iran, it will spread into Iraq, and everything, the whole world will just scatter and there'll be a third world war. Definitely that's not the kind of things we all want. And so we're saying that we have an opportunity right now, and I pray and I love the way the US has managed this so far. I mean, I must say that they've worked it in a way that they've shown that they're flexible. They're able to look at things from both ends. It's not like, oh, this is the way it must be and all of that. And they've shown leadership. And so the way they've handled it, the way the United Nations have moved in, all their agencies, the World Health Organization, all those who have championed the relief, Turkey, Egypt, and all of these people that have come to show, yes, don't let's hold on to their narrative and the things they're saying. But I'm saying that moving into humanity, saving people's life, making sure that what we have going on is not something we all want or desire to continue to go on. I think those are the games that we need to look at and find a way of leveraging on and making it better, so that at the end of the day we would have that peaceful world that we all desire.
So the northern part of Israel is Lebanon, with Hezbollah said to be 100,000 strong, with more weapons and more sophisticated weapons than Hamas have had, and definitely more experience over the years as well in their conflicts with Israel. But I heard from their foreign minister who says that they don't want war with Israel, but if Israel continues their provocation, they will also jump in the fray. But that the Lebanese people do not want to go to war. But Hezbollah is a part of the Lebanese, and they are stringent in the way they lob their rockets against Israel. And now there's an uneasy calm between the two because of the pause, but they say that as soon as the fighting continues, they will jump into the fray. And the foreign minister was saying that he wasn't sure of what will happen in that case, how Hezbollah will handle this conflict between Israel and Hamas. It seems that they are not all in with Hamas against Israel, correct?
Absolutely. And so I pray that we do not have that situation. And so people should not forget that Israel is not alone as well. They also have their allies. They are people who believe in who they are and what they believe and stand for. Apart from the fact that they are strong standing alone, they also have allies. And we clearly saw that the moment this started, the United States moved into that space to say, look, we really do not want a situation, because we understand that your peace is our peace, and the peace in that environment is our peace. And we really do not want anything to deteriorate into something where we'll have all sorts of splinters war everywhere, and at the end of the day, this will spiral out of control. So for Hezbollah, I mean, they can stay or come up with the way they feel right now, because they have a right to it. But truth of the matter is, we all do not want that, and that's not the way we want this to pan out. And we're hoping, and I like the fact that Israel even accepted in the first place, and we've not had any pounding this morning. And I'm hoping that talks are going on, and they also see reasons why this should take another turn. And I think that's where we're heading to. Yes, it will not be as seamless as we all hope it will be, but definitely we're not going to go to that dark 1 month that we just had.
Indeed, in the words of Gilad Erdan, the UN ambassador, Israeli ambassador to the UN, if Hamas surrenders unconditionally and hands over those involved in the October 7 terror attacks, that the war will end as soon as that happened. Thank you, Mr. Adeyemo. Mr. Oluseyi Adeyemo is a public affairs analyst who's been with us this morning. Many thanks.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, the World Health Organization is calling for Gaza's vulnerable health infrastructure to be safeguarded as the war-torn enclave faces an increased risk of epidemics and challenges in detecting infectious diseases. A fragile truce agreement between Israel and Hamas last week has allowed the World Health Organization and aid organizations to increase their delivery of essential supply, but these have been far from enough to meet the needs of Gaza's 2.3 million people. The Palestinian Health Ministry's Director of Infection Control says the highest number of patients are presenting with bronchitis and diarrhea. Many children were now suffering from diarrhea, according to a witness in Khan Yunis, who adds the water available to displaced people is not clean. In Gaza, the internal displacement of the population has caused overcrowding in shelters and other temporary living facilities.
Eventually, we will see more people dying from disease than we're even seeing from the bombardment if we are not able to put back this health system and provide the basics of life, food, water, medicines, and of course, fuel to operate the hospitals.
And the latest group of freed hostages arrived at a hospital in Israel in the early hours of this morning. The hostages could be seen exiting a military helicopter at Sheba Medical Center in Ramat Gan before boarding a van behind a privacy tent. Hamas released 16 hostages on the final day of the two-day truce extension. Citing Israeli officials, Israeli media reported the military will resume the attack on Gaza at 7 a.m. if the government did not receive a list of hostages to be released that met its criteria at that time. Israel, according to the reports, is demanding that at least 10 hostages be released on Thursday and that women and children be prioritized. Palestinians in Ramallah greeted the prisoners who were released as part of the hostage prisoner swap deal between Israel and Hamas. The Israel Prison Service said early on Thursday that freed 30 Palestinians from Israeli jails in the sixth such release under a truce arrangement with Gaza's Hamas group. Prominent Palestinian activist Ahid Tamimi was among the released prisoners who arrived in Ramallah. Israeli troops earlier this month arrested Tamimi, regarded in the occupied West Bank as a hero since she was a teenager, on suspicions of inciting violence. Her mother has denied the allegation and says it was based on a fake social media post. 2 Russian hostages arrived in Rafah, Egypt on the final day of the two-day pause in the fight between Israel and Hamas. The hostages are among the 240 people seized by Hamas during the rampage into southern Israel on October the 7th. So far, Gaza militants have freed 60 Israeli women and children from among 240 hostages under the deal that secured the war's first truce. 21 foreigners, mainly Thai farm workers, were also freed under separate parallel deals. In return, Israel has released 180 Palestinian security detainees, all women and teenagers, and some men and some teenagers. The initial 4-day truce was extended by 48 hours from Tuesday, and Israel says it'll be willing to prolong it for as long as Hamas frees 10 hostages a day. But with fewer women and children held, that could mean agreeing to terms governing the release of at least some Israeli men for the first time. Still to come on the program, Queen Rania of Jordan visits Gazan cancer patients in Amman. More details in a moment. Please stay with us.
innocent people living together in one community, working together in the same trade. We go into their midst, find out how they live and work.
Oh my goodness, food business is not an easy business. I spent more than 35 years for this community.
We tell these stories and how they survive in this economy. Community Report, we tell your story.
It's engaging, fascinating, and insightful. Join us as we connect with the global community of Nigerians around the world. We talk about life in the diaspora, flying the Nigerian flag, their culture, socio-political activities, and survival stories on Channels Television.
Britain is quite a racist country, and where they see asylum seekers on the street and they have a very poor opinion of them.
Diaspora Network, engaging diasporans for development.
Welcome to the final stretch of Israel-Hamas war this morning. Pro-Palestinian demonstrators marched in Mexico City and honked their horns in Santiago to show solidarity with Palestinians in Gaza. In Mexico, demonstrators carried signs with the messages "End Genocide" and "Free Palestine," amongst others. They marched along one of the most well-known avenues. Meanwhile, Chileans took to the streets of Santiago in their cars holding flags, shouting slogans demanding peace for Gazans. Wednesday's rally took place during the last day of the 6-day pause in military fighting between Israel and Hamas. Turkey has brought 44 more evacuees to the country from Gaza, including 23 patients. So far, the country has brought a total of 200 Palestinians from Gaza, including 114 people in need of treatment and their companions, according to the Turkish Health Minister Fahrettin Koca. Koca also says most of the patients are children of those in need of cancer treatment. Ankara is planning to build a few field hospitals inside Gaza near the Rafah border gate to treat patients in place. Turkey, which supports a two-state solution to the decades-old conflict, has strongly criticized Israel for its ground and air assault in Gaza. Unlike most of its Western allies and some Gulf states, NATO member Turkey does not view Hamas as a terrorist group. Families and friends describe their happiness and relief after watching their loved ones released by Hamas more than 50 days into their captivity. 16 people who were being held hostage in Gaza were handed over to Israeli officials on Wednesday, the second and last day of the pause in fighting between Israel and terror group Hamas, according to the Red Cross and other authorities. Amongst the released hostages was 13-year-old Gali Tarshanaski. Her granddaughter described the feeling of being able to breathe again since the child was released.
I don't know if it is now it's war. First of all, it is very exciting that all the families are united again, and all the abducted are back. I'm very happy about it. And yet my mother is there, so it is also sad for me because she was supposed to be released. She's 70, she's wounded, and I hope in the next phase she will be released.
The mother of an American-Israeli dual citizen believes to have been abducted by the terrorists of Hamas says her life had turned upside down during a meeting by the U.S. House of Representatives Foreign Affairs Committee. Orna Nutra's son, Omer Nutra, was serving in the Israeli military when he was abducted during the attack by Hamas on Israel on October the 7th, according to the IDF. Ruby Chen, the father of another dual Israeli-American citizen serving in the Israeli military, recounted seeing military officers arriving at his home and says his heart was going 200 miles an hour. IDF officers informed Chen his son had been taken hostage and was still alive, as believed. Both families urged the Biden administration to keep pushing for the release of the hostages.
We got a knock on the door. Just to explain to you what that is, you have on the other side 2 high-ranking Army officials. Believe me, you don't want your enemies to be able in that situation where you understand you do not want to open that door.
Finally, Jordan's Queen Rania has visited with Gazan children cancer patients who have been evacuated from the Strip to the Hussein Cancer Center in Amman. Queen Rania played with children in their hospital beds and spoke to their families as well as medical staff at the hospital. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres on Wednesday warned that the Gaza Strip was in the midst of an epic humanitarian catastrophe as calls grew for a ceasefire to replace the pause in fighting between Israel and Hamas. And the truce, the military pausing fighting has expired. We're looking to see what will be the next situation before hostilities continue once again between Israel and Hamas and the freeing of possibly more hostages. That's where we leave it for today's coverage of Israel-Hamas war this morning. I'm Olumide Macaulay. Thank you for watching. Stay with Channels Television for all the news.